We also want to talk about minimal capacity for knowledge translation. And importantly, a lot of persons who conduct systematic review sometimes gets the feeling that it is enough to conduct my systematic review and just to have that published. And it may be published with the Cochrane Library or maybe published in a peer-reviewed journal. Having your systematic review and publishing it is simply not enough. And the literature suggests that evidence synthesis, in order to improve health systems and to impact on policy, is dependent on effective knowledge translation. And so knowledge translation usually requires an additional set of skills that are not necessarily incorporated in the training of most researchers. So when we started conducting our systematic review, we weren't aware of knowledge translation and what we needed to do. And as we go on, we started to get more exposure to knowledge translation, and we recognize that it involves developing a network of end users who will facilitate the flow of the information once the systematic review is completed. And so one of the strategies I'd recommend to overcoming the challenges with getting the systematic review or the evidence from the systematic review implemented into policy or into practice guideline is to set up for each systematic review to set up a advisory committee that is made up primarily of persons who are key stakeholders, and some of which are going to be end users. So in the case of the supplementary feeding systematic review that we conducted, one of the things that we did was we included persons from the World Food Program, we included persons from UNICEF, and we included other stakeholders that were anticipating the findings of our systematic review because it had significant influence on what they did in terms of operating school feeding or operating feeding programs globally. And so ensuring that from the beginning of thinking through the systematic review, that you include such an advisory group that have the pertinent end users, that will help with the flow of information once the systematic review is completed. And to assist with that, one of the other things we recognize is that there is need for a sustainable capacity to retrieve, synthesize, interpret, and translate the evidence for use by policymakers, public health practitioners, and consumers. So yes, you are producing the reviews, but is there an evidence synthesis center? Is there a Cochrane Center where you are that can assist with getting the information out there and increasing awareness? The Cochrane movement is very much a global movement, and so there are several Cochrane centers and affiliate centers and associate centers across the globe. And so one of the key things that one can do if you're in a developing country is to look to see where your nearest Cochrane Center or Cochrane Associate Center is to you. And so one of the things you can do is you can join the Cochrane community, or you can go on the Cochrane.org website and you can just look to see where is your nearest center. And then you can communicate with that center, because again, having a center provides a base not only for the conduct of the systematic review, but for the translation of systematic reviews that are conducted that might be of relevance to your particular country or to your particular setting. And so to this end, one of the other things that we did from the Jamaican experience was to establish a Cochrane Associate Center in the Caribbean. And subsequent to that, we partnered with the Caribbean Public Health Agency, which is one of the chief end users of evidence that would be generated from systematic review. And so in partnering with the Caribbean Public Health Agency, we provided for them support for the integration of the systematic review evidence into guidelines and policy. So all their care guidelines, every piece of document that they're putting out on, for example, the treatment of blood pressure, the treatment of diabetes, we were able to provide support that they needed in order to develop these kind of guidelines once we are called upon. All right, so once we're called upon, we can provide that support, and that's the aim of establishing a evidence-based center or a evidence synthesis center or a Cochrane Center. So an important milestone was the development of the Caribbean branch, and so in 2013, approximately 3 years after the first person was trained in systematic review, we were able to launch our Cochrane Caribbean Associate Center. And as you can see, importantly, we garnered support from entities that are important to the translation of the work, such as the Pan American Health Organization. And there we had persons represented from our reference center, which was Cochrane United States, as well as persons representing from Cochrane Canada. The other thing we went on to do was to help the Caribbean Public Health Agency develop what is known as their evidence portal. And what the evidence portal does, it pulls together all published literature that is relevant to the developing countries of the Caribbean. And so what we were able to do with the help of John Lavis and his team at McMaster, as well as the folks at BIREME, we were able to develop this portal that archives and documents all the studies, both primary studies, systematic review, policy briefs, health technology assessment, economic evaluation, resolutions from World Health Assemblies. We were able to put these in one repository, and all information that is relevant to our region as a Caribbean is now searchable in this portal. A massive piece of undertaking, but it is useful if we are saying that we want to promote the use of evidence for decision making. And so having set up a center, having conducted the systematic review, we went a step further in assisting one of our main users in developing a translation tool for informing health decision makers as well as developmental decision making.